views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Bronx development has brought a mixed bag. There is not a Bronx neighborhood that is not undergoing some sort of construction or development. We need housing, sure, and we also obviously need affordable housing. But the age-old question is, of course, affordable for who? Is it possible to build housing that's affordable for Bronxites, housing that improves but does not gentrify a neighborhood and the Bronx as a whole? Tonight's guests think it is very much possible, and they have portfolios, they say, that can back it up. This is a dialogue that is central, no pun intended for one of our guests, central to every Bronx neighborhood. Please join me in welcoming from MBD Housing. It is Derrick Lovett. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
And also from the Hudson companies, it is Alexandra Kaplan. Nice to have you.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with you, Mr. Lovett. Just talk about MBD Housing and the vision you had. I made the assumption at the opening of the program that it is possible to do these things, that you can build the Bronx, develop the Bronx, and not gentrify the Bronx. Talk to me about your vision and MBD's vision of how you make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly. First of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, sure.
Pleasure to be here with you. MBD was formed in 1974 by a group of volunteers sitting in their apartments with their shoes next to them in case they had to run out because, you know, the Bronx was burning at that time. Then they've taken it and cleaned up the streets, opened daycares. There were a renaissance toward a lot of the development. Fast forward to today, we've developed over 3,000 units. We've developed a shopping center over 174th Street. And now MBD kind of went through a business cycle, if you will. I was on the board of directors for a period of time. I was in banking for about 25 years, and I'm a recovering banker, and decided what's next in life, and decided to join the staff and turn the organization around. What I saw when I first got there was a bit disturbing. The housing had gone through a life cycle and was in desperate need of repair. And so
You mean housing in general?
The housing in general, you know, it was in need of repair. The systems had outlived their usefulness. And so basically what we've done, the board of directors and the staff, was reposition over 1,000 units. And most of this was tenant in place. And if you know anything about development, doing it with tenant in place can be...
That's pretty challenging.
Can be challenging. We did it on time and within budget.
And what I think what would be nice for Bronxites to appreciate is when you say tenant in place, the word displacement doesn't belong in that conversation.
Absolutely
and that
not.
is a very important thing. So I don't know, maybe I'm looking for a silver bullet. How are you able to do it? Now, I talk to real estate developers and real estate agents and developers and other people, and they say, you know, if we make this percentage affordable, or if we, you know, lower the rents that far, we're not going to be able to even build the housing or keep it affordable for us. What is the silver bullet? Is there a silver bullet that makes it happen? And then, of course, for the larger projects, we're going to bring in Ms. Kaplan for.
Sure, the silver bullet is having partners. Partnership with HPD, the Housing Development Corp, and HDC made it possible by giving grants and favorable financing. For example, instead of having 100% debt, you may have bonds, and a portion of that would be equity that would be invested, would come in and provide the equity, which brings your costs down and therefore allows you to have less debt service, which is your mortgage, and allow you to run the property at a lower rate. Then you can bring the rents down.
I'm going to inject an answer to my own question, and which you didn't state, but maybe it's understood. You have to want to, right? If you view, and I'm talking about anybody who views the Bronx and views the wonderful opportunities for development in the Bronx and says, oh, here's a place I can come and land in and do it this way. Well, you know, okay, some of the local people be damned, so to speak. Then you're not going to do the work, do the background work, and seek out the kind of funding, the kind of partnerships that you're talking about. Do I have that right? Am I assessing that? And Mid-Bronx Desperados, MBD, which is the origin, they understand that you're going to either be here or not be here. You know, that kind of thing.
Correct.
Do I have that right?
Correct, and some don't last.
Right. Well,
Because there's one thing about building it, there's another thing of maintaining it and giving a superior product, which is what I believe. I believe that you shouldn't have to go to Park Avenue to live in a beautiful, well-maintained building. I told our supers and porters who are 32BJ employees, you work the same hours, you have the same skill sets, you have the same tools that they do on Park Avenue. Our buildings, after we reposition them, rehab them, they should look like you can pick them up and place them on Park Avenue. And it's up to you to keep them to that standard. And I believe that we do that.
I hope people are appreciating this, because the dialogue in the Bronx is so fraught with tension over these things, and maybe we can lend a little relief to say, wait a minute, it can be done. Now, big projects. We have two, La Peninsula. We're not specifically here to talk about that, but that's coming to the old Spofford. I actually happened to be there just the other day. And I'm so used to seeing Spofford, the empty Spofford there, and now it's going to be housing. So that's one thing. But then right in the center of downtown Bronx, so to speak, in the hub, is La Centrale. And I'm going to list a couple of things. BronxNet Television, which is top of the list for me, is going to have a studio there. The YMCA, which is just under BronxNet for me in terms of importance. But then also 1,000 units. How many units of housing at La Centrale?
Yeah, so overall, it's going to be a 5-building development with about 1,000 units of housing. Right now, we are reaching completion on what we affectionately call Building D, which our partners Breaking Ground and Communal Life are completing. And that's a mix of supportive housing and low-income housing. And if you walk by the hub right now, you'll see 2 large buildings, A and B, rising, which are set to be complete in summer 2020. So between D and A and B, you'll see about 650 households.
Let's just step back and address some of the things that I was talking about. If you saw this massive piece of land, this was a huge property that had nothing on it, it was just rubble, and you could look at it and say, well, we're going to do this. But the objective here for Hudson companies, and you work with other partners, I know you want to mention, you're welcome to mention those. Talk to me about what the vision is and why you would do something, and of course, back to the same question, how is it possible to do these things?
Yeah, so the story really starts with, again, our partners, Hudson with BRP, Jerry Kretschmer, Larry Hirschfield, Breaking Ground and Communal Life. It's a big team, which speaks to the success of having multiple partners, actually answering a request for proposals from HPD in 2012. And we were actually the last RFP to be awarded in the Bloomberg administration. And anyone who answers RFPs for the city knows that you really have to push the boundaries. It's not enough to just say you're creating quality, affordable housing. You really need to bring something to the area and bring something to the community. So like you said, the YMCA was a crucial part of our RFP response, and they, along with BronxNet, have been with us since the beginning, and that's been a huge part of the concept. And like you said, it's really important that for us, our development isn't just creating new housing, but it's new housing for people who live in that area. So we talked to many elected officials who said, I can't, my kids want to move back to this area and they can't afford it. So we wanted to create a complete mixed income community with everything from extremely low income units to moderate and middle income units, and that's what we've done.
We're showing some of the pictures there of the BronxNet facilities that are going to be there and all those kinds of things. To me, and we're definitely going to talk about AMI, and we're definitely going to talk about what is affordable, but to me, what characterizes this really immense project and fascinating project is what you said, that you're including a BronxNet TV studio and you're also including the YMCA. That to me is a message to the community that you are welcome, that this is not one of those projects that, as I said, comes from somewhere else that's looking to bring other people in. Talk to me about the perceived effect of what this will mean for that part of the Bronx.
Well, I think, like I said, it's going to allow people who grew up in that area to return and have their families live there if they want. We're completing units from studios to 4 bedrooms. It's really challenging to include 4 bedrooms due to some of the affordability reasons you mentioned in constructing affordable housing, and they're in our project. So it's going to not only allow people to have their homes and grow their families in the Bronx, maybe close to where they grew up or exactly where they grew up, but it's also going to support new local businesses. So we are extending the...
I'm sorry, I'm just checking off win, win, win every time
Yes.
she mentions it. Something that Derrick knows a lot about. But go ahead, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
We feel that way too. So, the early public housing, which had a lot of problems, was very interior facing. And it was really important for us to look outward. So we're actually extending a retail corridor from Westchester Avenue through our development. So that'll be all new businesses. That's where BronxNet will be, the YMCA. And you'll actually feel like you're walking down a retail corridor that's a part of the hub.
I really like what Mr. Lovett said, and I want to repeat it for you and go back to it. And this is the vision, and as a lifelong Bronxite, I feel this all the time. There's no reason why we can't have housing that's as nice as anybody else, and especially like this plot of land that is being built on rubble. I was at a playground, a 52 playground yesterday on Kelly Street in the South Bronx. Also was one of the burnt out spots and now is built up. This is going to be a real nice place for want of a better term, regular Bronxites to live, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about AMI and making them affordable. I did an interview with Carolyn McLaughlin, who has written a book called South Bronx Battles. She was one of the founders of the Citizens Advice Bureau and also what became Bronx Works. And we were talking about this very issue. And the conversation we had was, once you get down to where the AMI says 27.8% of people in the city of New York are, earning between $9,300 and $28,000, it becomes very difficult to build housing for them. Now, you mentioned, the kind of partnerships. She said to me, and I want to bounce this off both of you, we'll both get a chance to respond to it. She said to me, it can't be done without government subsidy. And so I want to evaluate that. Can it be done? You talked about the partnerships with HPD and other governmental agencies. Do we need subsidies, or can private development really get this done so that people aren't displaced and there is housing for people making between $9,000 or $9,300 and $28,000?
Unfortunately, there's a cost to building.
Well, yes.
There's a cost to maintaining the property. And then something has to subsidize those costs in order to bring them down. But also, there are trade-offs. For example, MBD will be building the largest passive housing building in North America, the old PS31, 144th and Grand Concourse. Well, when I was speaking to Councilman Salamanca, he said, you must have 30% of AMI. So my constituents must be able to afford to live in that building.
So I'm going to guess that conversation, then your response is, well, then let's work together to get the subsidies so we can afford it, so they can afford it, and we
And I spoke with my partners and said, look, we have to sharpen our pencils and make it happen. We were given our marching orders. This is what's wanted and needed. And we went back to the city hall and said, look, this is what we need to do.
And what's your response to that?
We had a very
question?
similar conversation with Councilmember Salamanca, and actually,
Well, having a friendly, supportive elected official in place, of course, he's the chair of the Land Use Committee. That makes it easier. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
well, I think it was a really important conversation because we not only had to make it work, but that speaks to the value of a public-private partnership. You both sort of push back on each other, and in the end, you just get a better project for it. So yes, we do need government. It's not just for the high cost of construction, but also to ensure that those units stay affordable for a longer period of time.
Can we use the housing? Now, we know that with substandard housing in NYCHA buildings and in other, and you do a lot of rehab work, I know that, that people can't do as well as people. The kids are not as productive in school. It's a burden on parents to have to work and come home to a place that is falling apart. I mean, it causes health problems. It goes on and on and on. Do you think that if you put down La Centrale, if you put down La Peninsula, that even people making less money will be able to do better in their lives, will be able to get better jobs, be able to focus better on go to school? I mean, that's what, I guess I'm saying something that's somewhat obvious, but to me, that's what's so important about this, is so that people make 9,000 can eventually make 20,000 and eventually make 50,000.
Yeah, I can only imagine that not having that stress to go home to and having a really nice place to live is extremely important.
Self-identity, identity of the
I can
Bronx. Go ahead.
speak directly about that. When I first became the executive director of MBD, there were 4 buildings that you couldn't find that much original paint with the graffiti and with the lighters, and it was just horrible. So
In a building?
In a building.
What building is
for a
that?
building. This is over on Vice Avenue and 173rd.
Okay.
And so I actually took money out of my own pocket to paint these buildings and make repairs because whether I've been there for 12 minutes or 12 years, I'm the executive director, my name is on this. I could not have that. So we painted these buildings and I knocked on the doors of the folks and said, do you like this paint job? They said, yes, thank you. I said, only you can keep it this way. I saw kids playing in the hallways. I said, when you see other kids come in here, don't let them paint in your halls. 3 years later, no graffiti. We put that into a much larger repositioning, new roof, new boilers, new kitchens, new baths, new appliances. And when the men and women come home with their families, their heads are held high, they're smiling.
This is my home.
There's no leaking roofs, there's not leaks under the sink, everything is brand new. And yes, it gives them a feeling of empowerment, like they can go out and take on the world.
You know, I talked about caring and about the fact that you care and you care and Hudson Companies cares. You and I were having a conversation and I cut you off because I wanted you to talk about it on the show. And that is the responsibility of people who move into these new housings to kind of address it like it's their community, like they have some ownership. Talk a little bit about that and how you feel about that.
They must be invested. They must feel that they're a part of a larger community. And when you feel that you're part of a community, you're going to treat the property better. You're going to treat the neighbors better. You're going to be invested in what's going on. And I think it's very important that people understand that this is your home. I'm not some distant landlord that you don't see. I'm in the community. You see me every day. When I first said that, when I was talking to some seniors at a meeting, and I was telling them about how we're going to do this first project, and they had their arms folded, and they were, we heard that before. And I said, as I once heard Congressman Rango once say, you may have heard it before, but you haven't heard it from me. After we repositioned these buildings that were beautiful, the next tenant meeting we had for the next buildings, they were like, oh, we saw what happened because everybody knows everybody. When are you going to do my unit? When are you going to do our buildings?
There you go.
And it builds morale.
Bronxites can't be fooled. That's the way I see it. I want to show some of the portfolios. We have some pictures just of random stuff, so we're going to put them up. Maybe if we could put them up here so they can see them. Let's see what we got. Let's see what MBD has worked on, is going to be working on. We got some of these photos. I'd like to do that. What do we got? I guess they're going to put them up. Talk to me, let's start while we're waiting for that. Talk to me about the old PS31 site just south of Hostos Community College.
I want to be clear. I did not take that building down.
Oh, okay.
That building was
your decision.
That building was already taken down. It was an RFP, as you mentioned, a request for proposal, and MBD went on that with Trinity Financial. And we won the
So
proposal.
you're going to be putting something
It's going to
up.
be the largest passive housing building in North America. And the thing is, Nick Limbo, who owns Monadnock, he goes, Derrick, you're lying. I said, what do you mean? He goes, it's going to be the largest passive housing building in the world.
Oh, there you
Because
go.
he did the largest passive housing building on
ours.
Roosevelt Island.
Yeah,
And he
it's
said, that was the
ours.
largest one in the world. He said, this is going to be larger than
I
that.
know.
So,
I guess you're one
What
up.
what do you mean by? We're going to get. We have some. You can see here. We've got some of the stuff. This was on your website, but talk to me about what do you mean by passive housing?
passive
for people
housing
who aren't
has to do
familiar
with how the air is heated and cooled. And you're spending a lot more money on the infrastructure, insulating, and all the air will be filtered. So, but it will be a 70% reduction in utility cost.
Wow, fantastic! All right, so what is this? This was off your website. What is this?
This was a rehab. In 2011, we broke ground. We teamed up with Monadnock, Nick Limbo, and Kirk Goodrich. And I said to him, see, this backyard here, that wasn't in the budget. And I said, Nick, I said, if your parents lived here, what would you want? I said, we have to make this special, Nick. We got to treat it like it's if our own families.
And so that's what it
he
was, and
said,
this is what it
he
is.
said, you're absolutely right, Derrick. You're absolutely right. We do have to do that. He's a great guy. I love him. This was something that wasn't in the budget. We made it happen, and we have I claim to have the largest rose garden besides the Botanical Gardens. Because we put a large rose garden in there.
Where is that located?
This is 1441 Boston Road.
Here we go.
It's a
All right, keep it
92-unit
going.
senior
We've
building.
got a couple more that we want to show.
Oh, this is a Mid-Bronx Plaza. That was a 92-unit rehab, a part of the other one.
And what was the condition of that building before you took hold of it? Or don't ask.
It had some challenges. The systems were just run down. And the problem earlier on, in the early 80s, when this program, when Koch brought the program out, it was new. And people really didn't know how to underwrite it. And you had some contractors that didn't give the neighborhoods the respect of using good workmanship and good material. So it was kind of
And this one?
That's 1441 as well,
Oh, that's 1441.
the front side of it.
Oh, that's the front side of the building we had just
And
seen.
isn't that something you would want your parents to live in?
I would consider living there. I
Yeah, me as well.
I'm okay where I am, but yeah, there's no reason why not, especially if it's got a courtyard, if it's those kinds of things, and of course the kind of amenities that Hudson Company's putting into La Centrale. Any more? Do we have a couple more? Or was that it?
I think that's just more of the same.
More of the same.
And the kind of care we give, Gary, when I walk down the street, all of a sudden I feel somebody grab me. And it's one of the seniors kissing me and hugging me. And the thing is this, if they give me a phone call, if I'm in the area, Mr. Lovett, they say to me, I have a problem. What's going on? I might sink. I would take off my jacket, get up under the sink, take a look, call the super. I mean, it's that kind of personal touch, as if it's your family.
One other thing that you do, and I want to ask you about, and you mentioned it earlier, is the 32BJ, and that is union contracts.
Right.
Very important to many of the people in the Bronx because they're union workers. They could be city workers. They understand the importance of unions. Many construction projects would rather not. They'd say, we'd rather not go there. Is it helpful or hurtful, or does it cost you more? What's your vision of using union labor in
The costs?
I'll get to you and how Hudson views it as well.
Let's talk about the maintenance, because 32BJ are my maintenance workers. The cost is outweighed by what we get in quality. When I first came on board, the buildings were horrible. A lot of guys were hiding behind the union, not wanting to work. I called Corrado in from 32BJ, and I said, hey, man, I got a problem. I said, I explained it to him. They said, well, Derrick, we're here to help you. We're here to be a part of the solution. So let's turn this around and make it happen. So
it's nice to have that kind of
it's
cooperation.
great to have that kind of one-on-one. And then Kyle Bragg, who's a VP there, said, okay, Derrick, let's get this together. Let's put it together. So the problem was, you can't put millions of dollars into these buildings and not invest in your human capital. But the problem is these men and women have families. They couldn't always go from 6 to 9 at night to go for training. Now, the training is the Thomas Shoreman Fund. That's the training with 32BJ. So what they did is, they have training at Hostos. And so one day a week, half a day my supers went, the other half a day my porters went. Right after lunch hour, they opened up the facilities so the guys can get trained during the day, so they don't have to get trained at night. That's the kind of cooperation that you have.
Well, cooperation, and it speaks to what you started, what you both started out with, and that's the idea of partnerships. Talk to me about that kind of a partnership and how difficult it is to set up these things, or do you find that now everybody wants to build in the Bronx so we can get these partnerships? Just talk to me about putting this together.
Right. Well, it's really important to kind of find partners who are equally established with the city and who have a really quality track record of affordable housing. So each one of our partners has decades upon decades of experience with the city. So the city knows that they can qualify us and that they can award to us and that we will follow through. And I just wanted to speak to the labor point because we committed to 35% minority and women-owned business hiring for La Central. So with our construction contracts and permanent hiring, we'll be meeting and achieving those goals, and we're on track to do so.
That is very, very exciting. We're just about to wrap it up. Let's talk about the first notice came out that there are studio apartments. I guess there's a lottery for them. And I know that people are watching now going, we need housing. I know somebody who needs housing. How can we, these sound great. How can we tap into it?
Yes, so Breaking Ground in Communal Life, their building, which is half supportive housing and half low-income housing. They just opened on the lottery on Housing Connect. So that's the 626 Bergen address. So feel free.
Where's that building? A, B, C,
D.
D.
Not sequential, but you can look out for lotteries for the first phase of A and B next year.
Okay, Housing Connect is a way to
Housing
go through it.
Connect,
And,
yes.
people looking for housing, if they don't already know that website, they ought to do that. They can do that and get to La Central through that. And Derrick, for people who say, gee, I'd love to live in those kinds of buildings, what do they have to do to find out what you're working on and what's coming on the pipeline?
Well, right now, a lot of our units are being listed through Housing Connect as well.
Okay.
And before I came here, I sent you the links for the senior housing and regular affordable housing.
Right.
So they can contact you for those links.
There's all those kinds of opportunities. Derrick Lovett from MBD Housing, thank you so much. And I'm going to repeat what I said. To me, if you have developers and people who want to do it the right way, it can be done. That's what. And same thing for you, Alexandra, Kaplan. Thank you so much. Thank the people at Hudson Companies for finding a new home or an additional home for Bronx. And I do want to mention, it's not that we're moving out of our regular facilities. We have, of course, our East Bronx facilities, and then we will be adding. When are we moving in there? I didn't even find out.
Fall 2020.
All right, so about a year and a few months. Well, you can tell I can't. Listen, thanks, folks, for doing the right thing about building the Bronx. Folks, if you have further questions or comments, if you want to find out about some of the housing, we will help you make that referral. Or anything you heard on the show or anything going on in the Bronx, send us an email, bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. You can tweet at BronxTalk, post them on our Facebook page. You can send me a message on Facebook. Get to us. We'll help you out. We want people to live right. We thank our producer is Helen Greenberg. Our directors are William Guzman and Nick Barrera. We will see you next week, as usual. Good night.